Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Some new data were released to us over the weekend from NOAA that kind of stitched together the national temperature and precipitation ranks by state. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to slide through this webpage to kind of show you what some of those data look like. It's kind of a neat site. They aggregate the data down to national level, and then down to regions, and then down to state, and even down to climate district. But what I really want to focus on here are a couple of maps. We're going to stop right here in this group of four. First, this is the statewide average temperature ranks. We're going to come back to this in a few moments. But to be honest, so far, June and now early July have really seen a lack of long duration intense heat. I'm going to explain why in just a few moments. But take a look at the precipitation ranks map. So we sit here at 109th out of 127. So 127 would be the wettest. You can see all throughout much of the southeast, getting over to the mid-south and back into Texas, this area has been wet, as has Missouri, Illinois, Indiana. Where the drier conditions have been, it's been back farther to the west. See this? And that's where we really watched a lot of heat and a lot of drought. So corn and soybean farmers, take note that South Dakota had its driest June on record. Again, there's 127 years in this NOAA data set. Now that we've got that kind of outlook done, at least looking back toward June, let's go ahead and look at what we got here in the last 7 days. So this particular map shows you total precipitation through the last 7 days. And it's a combination product, so there's both rain gauge data and radar data in this. It's mostly radar data. So of course this is where Elsa went. So let's talk about that first, because we did take note that we were expecting the eastern half of North Carolina to be targeted. And as we see here, let's just zoom in. The heaviest rains did move a bit farther in toward the central part of the state. But in general, the model forecast did quite well overall with picking up on the track of this system. I think that would be the major conclusion I'd take from it. But the reality is 3 to 6+ inches of rain did fall because of this. We can then come right in through this part of the Midwest down into the Ohio Valley. That's been an area that's been extremely wet. A lot of thunderstorm activity in through here over the last 7 days. And a cutoff low over Texas just kind of slowly spun in, keeping rainfall amounts there quite high as well. Now, given that we've now seen a coastal low in Texas and tropical storm Elsa, where does this leave us with our discussion of the tropics? And we're going to come back to this rainfall pattern here in a few moments. Well, the National Hurricane Center's website saying no new tropical cyclone activity is expected through the next 5 days. We might even be able to stretch that a little farther, because as I look out here all the way to the 240-hour forecast, that of course would be day 10, much of the action is going to be over here in the Indian monsoon and then near the Philippines, so right into this area. Now what that means is we're watching the northward advancement of the Indian monsoon. It happens this time of year, so a lot of our really good rising motion happens in this area. And just given the flow of the tropics in the MJO, that tends to produce quite a bit more suppression into this area. Now, if we were going to go into a very active time period in the tropics, you'd see these blue-green colors showing up right in through here. All right. So just notice we don't see that. And so therefore, we could be going in through the mid part and end of July with a low probability of tropical cyclone development. But to be honest, that's climatologically consistent. This is from NOAA showing you the number of storms per 100 years. So again, tropical storms are in this, tropical storms and hurricanes are in this red shading, and then this interior color here would be just hurricanes. And you notice it that they pop up usually in June, and then there's a bit of a lull. See that right into there? That's as we watch the Indian monsoon come on. And then we get into August, September, reaching that peak around September 10th, and then fading again. So this is where we currently sit, and it appears that 2021 is going to kind of echo what this long-term statistical average would suggest. Okay. So from there, what I think is the most important thing in our forecast is going to show up in the upper level flow pattern. So take a look at this. Here we are on Monday. There's a cutoff low that's almost over my home state of Illinois. And as it moves through, it's going to be a slow mover, but it's going to take its time through middle of this week to come out here into parts of eastern Canada. There's another little shortwave coming in through this area, but what I want you to watch is what happens right back here as we get toward the end of this week. So this one's going to bring in some severe weather, while we're going to just have scattered storms through the middle part of this week. But what you're going to notice is, here we go, there's Friday into Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Did you see it? This ridge anchors over the Four Corner States, but begins to spread here into parts of the northern plains and Canadian Prairie. Now the flow goes around it. So this is what we call the East Pacific Oscillation is going to do. So there's a trough here in the Gulf of Alaska, runs up over this ridge, and then the flow comes down like that. Now as we work our way through the next week, getting into this pattern, what this effectively would do was leave some sort of stalled out boundary in through this area while the heat runs up like this. And we're going to see that pattern last into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, possibly Thursday and Friday of next week. And that is going to be our most dominant factor, given that the tropics are quiet right now. So let's see what this means as we look out here in terms of precipitation and temperatures through that time period. In a nutshell, just take a look at this graphic, which shows you the next 15 days of precipitation anomalies. For the corn and soybean folks out there, this is all happening by middle of the week. And then this whole region goes over toward drier after we get that new ridge building in. But stalled out frontal boundaries here, while we tend to be more of the scattered precipitation variety this week, we could see our precipitation chances increase through the mid-Atlantic and the Carolinas into next week. But you notice that the Ohio River Valley through the mid-south, this part of the southeast getting over to Texas, we're expecting to be wet. And I'm going to see the southwestern monsoon come in as well. So that's kind of our national picture of things through the next 15 days. Now let's get into some of those details. Well, you notice this, right? Sitting smack dab over Bermuda is the Bermuda High. And we have been talking about that, it feels like, for about 6 to 8 weeks, as this being a persistent feature in the flow. The low I mentioned is here, moving over Illinois, and it's going to have the flow wrap around it like this as it heads on off to eastern Canada. And that's going to be the source of lift for some storms we might be dealing with here in the near term. But that's it. That's all we're really seeing out of this particular picture. I'd just like to show it to you here. Here we go, working our way through Monday. That's Monday around noon, getting into the afternoon and evening hours. And what you notice is there's going to be some scattered storms. So you're probably going to look at your local forecast and see, there's a 20 to 30% chance of scattered storms. That's because the low is back over parts of the Ohio Valley. As we then work our way into Tuesday morning, Tuesday midday, and then getting here into Tuesday evening. Again, it's going to be a situation because that low goes toward eastern Canada, not toward the northeast, that we don't have the strong lifting to give us a lot of storms here. And then as we work our way toward the middle of the week, this is now out to Wednesday, that system comes plowing through South Dakota. Remember, that was the driest state in the country compared to normal in the month of June. So some much needed rain in through there. Well, we just don't see too much of it here spreading across North Carolina. Scattered storms at best is what we're seeing at this particular point. So when does that pattern begin to shift and change? Let's shrink this up so we can see it a little bit. All right. Over the next 7 days, the European model has the first low cutting up like this, the second low coming in through this area, and they just tend to leave these weak fronts that have a difficult time getting over the Appalachian Mountains. Because there's nearby high pressure, we don't see our precipitation patterns being too far from normal. In fact, they do favor the drier side of things here along the East Coast. So that's going to change as we get out there into next week, though. And I'm going to show you that by going to the operational European model. So here's first low. We've already talked about that one. Moving on off to the north and east. Now, you're going to watch Wednesday through this weekend, just flashes of green showing up here. That's the flow around the Bermuda High and the daily chances for scattered storms. So see it? Yeah, the big storm system goes out of South Dakota through Wisconsin. But this is Thursday, getting into, watch, Friday, and now into Saturday. Now at this point, what's going to be shifting here is higher pressure is going to try to move into this area. Now we'll stall out a frontal boundary here for our weekend and starting next week. So what you're going to notice is that moisture is going to push farther to the south. See it there? Now we're talking about Sunday evening. That frontal boundary lingers sitting right into this area. So we see over the weekend better chances of rainfall, and then especially into early next week. So this is now Monday morning, afternoon, and evening. So we see that again. And then as we work our way through Wednesday and Thursday, do you just notice how the boundary sits here while higher pressure builds back into the Midwestern part of the United States? That's what that ridge I explained to you earlier is going to do. So thinking about all of that, let's just go back out there once again, here we go, and see how things shake down by Wednesday the 21st. The ridge is here and spreading into this area. Just notice the flow comes around it and does this with a broader trough here. And that's going to put a boundary in this area, a frontal boundary. That's why the jet stream looks like this. It's all about the low-level temperature gradient. I'm going to explain that to you real quick. The jet stream level flow is a consequence of the surface to low level in the atmosphere temperature gradient. That's it. So let me show you how this ends up kind of playing out. We see that in the GFS ensemble, we tend to be wetter right in through here and drier toward the southeast coast. Much of North Carolina, I think, is going to be wetter than what the GFS says because I'm more closely following, I think, what the European model is going to suggest here. And we're going to look at it two ways. The European model through day 10 gives us an 80 to 90% chance of seeing an additional inch of rainfall. That's how we would interpret this. Much drier here, drier in parts of the high plains toward Wyoming, and of course the extremely hot and dry weather still in parts of the western United States. But here's maybe the other way to look at it. See, the European model does flatten that boundary out right in through here and leaves it. And that's why we do see better chances of seeing slightly above normal rainfall going out into week 2, which gets us all the way out to the 26th. But notice how dry we're going to go over in this area as we press forward here. Now that we got the 2 weeks out of the way for precip, let's talk temperatures. We're going to slide up here and take a look at the time period, basically the last 30 days. So the 13th of June through early in the morning yesterday. And the story is pretty clear. The heat's been west, and we've been cooler. We have really resisted having extreme temperatures on the high side of things. And I think that persistence is going to win the day here. So let me show you what I mean. Through the next 5 days, let's just take a look from the National Digital Forecast Database. Okay, we're near normal today, highs around 90. But then as we work our way into Tuesday, upper 80s, lower 90s. Same thing on Wednesday. Getting into Thursday, about the same. Getting into Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, do you notice that? We just aren't seeing any signals due to the way that upper level flow pattern is set up to introduce really, really high heat. All that really hot air is here. And it stretches into the Canadian prairie as well. That's the ridge opening up into this direction. We might be able to see a little bit better if we just look out here. This is the day 5 through 10 time period. So we're expecting near normal temperatures, okay, for our midsummer. All the excessive heat is packed into this area. We're cooler through parts of the plains, cooler through the mid-south, and cooler along the Gulf Coast. But remember, just by a couple of degrees. So it's still in the 90s. It's just not 95 to 100, where it can be that hot in this part of the country this time of year. So from there, let's talk about some bigger picture things, and I'll wrap up. Atmospheric momentum. What is it? It's basically looking at the flow west to east of the atmosphere and comparing it to normal. We get concerned when the values go below average. That would mean that the atmosphere's kind of slowed down. And when it slows down, it tends to get blocked up. And we saw that, right? We saw the ridge developing in the west and just spreading. So we do notice that we do not have high momentum, which would be these warmer colors here, between 30 degrees north and 60 degrees north over the last several weeks, and no indications that it's going to just crank up anytime soon. That's why I'm kind of hung up on the persistence in the pattern. The other reason is because of the MJO. It's currently sitting over the Indian Ocean, and it's going to curl around and stay there, but kind of fall into what we call null space, which is right here. Now, I understand the MJO is a pretty tricky thing to wrap our minds around if you don't study it every day like guys like me do. But what I want to tell you is if we had the values way out here farther away from the center, it becomes a much better predictor. So translation to all of this is seen in these maps. Over the next 30 days, let's look at the 30-day time period of, how about July 21st through August 20th? You see what I see. That ridge is still there. See it? That high pressure cell? So the flow is going to do that. And we've seen that, right? That's been that way for most of this summer. So we should expect then open Gulf transport off of the Atlantic, and the 30-day precipitation pattern. It looks about normal here, with quite a bit of moisture coming into this area of the country in through here. Now, how far to the west does that make it? We need to keep a close eye on this. And if you're signed up for my daily reports, which I'll give you the link to that at the end of this video, you'll be able to see the brand new data that's going to come out tonight. I'll put it in tomorrow morning's report. So we'll keep an eye on that. But in terms of temperatures, I don't think I'm going to surprise anybody when I show you this. This is the temperature outlook. The heat's west, the heat's north, the heat's here in the mid parts of the Midwest. And you get south of that line, and we just see temperatures hanging around closer to normal. Like I said at the beginning, let's keep an eye out for the very end of July and then getting into August for more tropical activity. But until then, I'm not seeing much, okay? Neither is the National Hurricane Center. So I'll look forward to giving you another update next week. Until then, have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.